Okay, so this is going to be the wall plaque from Oba's Palace. You notice there are two images here, both from College Board. Um, sorry, I forgot to start my timer, as I always do that. Okay, so the image on the right, you can see very much reflects what you see on the left. The image on the right is a contextual image, so meaning it gives context to what we're seeing. A number of the works from Africa that we'll look at also have contextual images. The golden stool had a contextual image. You saw not just the stool, but also the contextual image of the stool during some kind of ceremony during which the king, the Ashanti king, sat next to it. Here we have the Oba, which is the king, the um, Oba, the Edo people of the Benin culture, which is many of which are now located in Nigeria. So this is the king here. So again, there's still a king, right? So remember, we're talking about cultures, not countries. Cultures, not countries. So as we can see, as you've already heard, we're dealing with obviously hierarchical scale. You notice that it's made out of brass. Well, it's made out of brass. Uh, the Benin people were able to learn lost wax casting from Europeans who, in the process also of their trade relationship with them, specifically the Portuguese first, they were able to get brass. And so they developed this really incredible process of making these wall plaques, which totally decorated the royal palace. So this is just one of many, 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 many. And how did they get to where they are now is another story, which we'll get to in just a moment. So what are we looking at? We're looking at about right here. So here's Nigeria. Here is the country of Benin, right? But these people would have been over what's now Benin and Nigeria. So that's why in the identifying information, it's located as Nigeria, right? Okay, so this is from the 16th century, so 1500s, right? So trade way back in the Renaissance, not just among the Europeans or the European East, but also the Europeans down into Africa. Really important. So the as we saw earlier with the golden stool, we still have kings, right? We still have chiefs. We still have kings in many cultures in Africa, and they still have authority, though maybe not governmental authority, but kind of cultural authority, and they can decide what happens in certain areas over which they rule. So again, it is a complicated system. Yeah. Okay, so there were about 900 of these plaques that were they're obviously relief casting, high relief, right? Look how far these pieces come out from their surface. That were on the front of the royal palace and were displayed there. So we see also, as I already mentioned, hieratic or hierarchical scale to demonstrate who's important. Obviously, the guy in the middle, who is the king, is the most important. He also happens to be sitting on a horse there. Lost wax casting, which you already know about, that was what was used to create it. So we're going to look at this and think about the fact that the in Benin, we have a really active trade relationship between the Benin and the Portuguese. And it was very lucrative for both groups for quite a while. It started back in the 15th century, right? What did the Portuguese get out of it? Peppers, cloth, stone beads, things that, obviously they couldn't get in Europe. And the Benin got coral and brass, right? Among other things. We'll see that coral represented on the Oba, that's the king, right? We have this coral. You can't necessarily tell it's coral here, but we know it's coral. How do I know it's coral? Look at this contextual image, right? The Oba, the king, wearing coral, lots of it, as opposed to these guys, right? So let's see here. We have the king and his attendants, right? The coral beads I noted identify him as the king, and the attendants are holding a shield above his head, right? So this is kind of a suggestive of a protective gesture, but also a very honoring gesture. Let's go back and look at that original. Same idea, same idea. Maybe they don't look the same, but it's the same idea. We'll see that also with umbrellas being used in the same way with another piece, I believe. Okay, so here are just some of these brass plaques, and how the question is how did you know how did they create these again? They learned the lost wax casting process from the Europeans they were trading with, and they got really, really, really good at it. So much so that when hundreds of years later, as we have different Europeans showing up in the area, and they kind of find it hard to believe that the people of Benin did this, right? That tends to be the way. That sounds very much like what you heard with the Great Zimbabwe. When the Portuguese showed up to what was once Great Zimbabwe, they didn't really believe that the Shona people had done it. Okay, so we have rosettes here. Yes, rosettes, probably inspired by them having seen Christian crosses. They're not Christian, but the rosettes are probably derived from images of Christian crosses they saw. Horses, also not native to Africa. This is a result of trade, and clearly also a symbol of power, because only, obviously very important, very wealthy people would own a horse. But even the horse is used in the hierarchical scale because the horse is tiny in comparison to the oba, right? It's possible we could think about the plaques as kind of responses to European books. We have, we go back here, we have all these different plaques, and so we might think of them as different pages in an illustration. In fact, yes, so that might be one way that we can look at the plaques. This is from our textbook. I'm going to put these slides, make these slides available to you. It's not critical that you read them, but it can be very helpful. It kind of reinforces some information and gives some good descriptions. This is obviously a different work, but it's still a Benin plaque, so much of the information would apply. Hundreds of these plaques once adorned the palace wall, facade, and how did they get to where they are now, which is not where they were originally? Well, the British. We'll hear that over and over again. The British looted the palace during the 1897 punitive expedition. In the past, the primary trade relationship between the British and the Portuguese began to wane, and between Benin and the Portuguese began to wane, and the British started kind of taking over, and they really wanted more of what the Benin had, and so they basically looted it. And I know if you're thinking, "Oh, are you exaggerating?" No, I'm not exaggerating. So they went to the palace and they took all of these plaques, right, and they took them back with them to Europe, these plaques, which represent basically the history of their people, right? So this isn't just a simple, like, we're having a war, right? This is, we're going to go in and we're going to take what belongs to you, including things that are important to your culture. This is an ongoing issue in the British Museum. There is the question of, should these plaques be returned to the Benin? And of course, the British Museum continually says no, just like they say no to the Greeks with the Acropolis, with the pieces from the Acropolis. You'll see plaques, not just the British Museum, but there's one at the DMA as well. They kind of got spread out all over the place. Yes, 1,200 soldiers, and they, took what they wanted, got what they got for the sake of getting it. And there is a Khan Academy article, video that you should definitely watch. And then there's also this other video that I just found today, where is a spoken word poet talking about using the voice of one of the characters in the plaques. And it's kind of interesting. You don't have to watch it if you don't want to, but it's there for you if you would like it. Okay,